So before we jump into actually designing these patterns, I wanted to highlight the history of the Ogee and Quatrefoil style of patterns. So first, let's start off with the Ogee. So what is the Ogee? An Ogee is a distinctive pattern with two continuous S-shaped curves, narrowing and widening. These two curves basically form a perfect oval before repeating out gracefully. They're very much known for their pleasing flow and rhythm, and this layout is extremely versatile as a design element. In fact, designers from cultures all around the globe have been using it in patterns. They can be modern and sleek when used in apparel, large-scale and elaborate in home furnishing fabrics, or really beautifully decorative and ornate on architectural molding. The Ogee in particular is an interesting and subtle way to introduce Moroccan-style elements to any new or existing design style from traditional to modern. But again, when pulling from additional cultures, though, I do think it is important that you read up, learn about it, understand it, and then offer your perspective in that style. So when we're looking at the history of the Ogee style, this shape can trace its history all the way to ancient Persia and the tomb of Cyrus the Great. The Ogee is a curved shape consisting of a concave arc and vertical ends, and as a pattern, it almost has like an onion shape. In architecture, it's called an Ogee arc, composed of two Ogees mirrored left to right and then meeting at an apex. The shape has a really deeply rooted history and was heavily used in the Gothic style of the 14th and 15th centuries. Although it is a common characteristic of European architecture, it was first introduced from the Middle East. So here are just some styles of Ogee applied when we're looking at it in kind of like a fabric or textile perspective, vector artwork, and then other styles of more ornate creations using kind of like a medallion motif with floral elements and plant life elements incorporated into it. Now that we understand more about the Ogee style and the history behind it, let's jump into the Quatrefoil. So the Quatrefoil is a symmetrical shape with four lobes or foils of equal size. The Quatrefoil is the ancient symbol for good luck. The word is derived from Latin roots and it means basically four leaves. So when you think of a four-leaf clover, that's essentially the style and the overall shape of this pattern. So quator means four and folium means leaf. You put them together and you have quatrefoil. It looks like a simplified flower with four squat petals or four interconnected circles that slightly overlap. Its shape is old and the name comes from the Latin meaning for leaf. So when you see one, it might seem familiar because it's commonly used in art, design, and architecture. So now let's talk a little bit more about the history of the Quatrefoil. The Quatrefoil enjoyed its peak popularity during the Gothic and Renaissance eras. I think both of these styles of patterns are very much influenced by this era, and it's most commonly found as tracery, mainly in Gothic architecture, where Quatrefoil often may be seen at the top of a Gothic arch, sometimes filled with stained glass. Although the design is often referred to as of Islamic origin, there are examples of its use that precede the birth of Islam by almost 200 years. The monastery of Studios in Constantinople was built in 462 AD, soon after Christianity became legal in the Byzantine era. And the arches seen are the product of taking a regular quatrefoil and dividing it in half. So it's often found in art, architecture, and religious symbolism. The ornamentation of the Quatrefoil continues to delight those who look at it and are inspired by it. A design detail that is embedded within the Greek Revival, Gothic, and Renaissance periods, its distinctive shape and ornamentation endures to embellish our world with its beautiful harmony and symmetry. It's very much a decorative framework of symmetry of four lobes that radiate from a common center. And when we look at how we're going to build it, this kind of all makes sense as we work through creating it within the software. So when we look a little bit more deeply into the history, the Quatrefoil and similar arabesque shapes appear in Moorish and Islamic structures in Spain, Turkey, and all across the Middle East, dating back before the Renaissance. The Quatrefoil presumably made its way to Europe by way of the Silk Road. It was carved and printed on small and easily transportable objects such as carpets and velvets and silks brought into Europe as luxury objects. Quatrefoil motifs, especially in three-dimensional objects, require a really high degree of mathematical skill and craftsmanship to successfully execute creating them. And so as the quatrefoil made its way to Europe, it was incorporated into things like buildings that are known for grandeur, cathedrals, and things like that. Quatrefoils were often used in tracery, the stone frames around stained glass as well. And here are just some examples of the quatrefoil motif applied. It could be as simple as the four lobes outlined in a specific color on a colorful background. You can apply effects to it like a watercolor style, and you could add additional elements to the lobes, or it could be as detailed as you see all the way on the left here, with additional elements intertwined and applied and created so that you get this beautiful motif within these gorgeous tiles. So now that we understand the history, and it's not by any means all of the history, but a good amount of it, let's jump into actually creating some of these elements.